Hi everybody. Welcome to Basecamp. We are super excited to see you all today. We are recording, as always, for people who might miss Basecamp and would like to catch up with it later. We'll be posting it up on our blog. We are thrilled to have Chris and Sumari from Blueprint Education join us today to present. As usual, we'll do a tight 30 minutes. We'll do the first 10 minutes of presentation, about 10 minutes where I'll dig in a little more and press Kristen on some of those things she tries to slide by us. And then we'll save 10 minutes at the end for questions from the audience. If you have questions as you're going along though, and you want to put them into the chat to make sure they get answered, please do. And otherwise, let's get started. Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, fantastic. Give me just a minute to share my screen. Can everyone see that okay?
Got it.
All right, my name is Kristen Sumari. I'm currently the Director for Agile in Education for Blueprint Education in Phoenix. And we are a school district that serves about 700 students. We're an alternative charter school. And so we service students that some districts don't want to put time and effort and energy into cultivating and loving on, and we take those students on and love them anyway. Speaking of that, one of the amazing things we've always done well is love our students. We've always been able to take them in and give them the second chances and really make them feel at home. But one of the things we weren't doing well was serving our students. And at the time that I'm going to be talking about with you guys, we didn't even know there was a difference. What you see on the screen here is our iceberg is melting. This is a little reference to the book written by John Cotter about a group of penguins whose iceberg was melting. They had no idea what their fate was going to be. They were just living life. We use that because it's so symbolic of where Blueprint Education used to be. In about 2014, we were experiencing complete financial loss. There was so much low trust in our district, teachers against admin and teachers against teachers. Our student scores were just falling lower and lower. In fact, even the Arizona Department of Education had given our school a grade of a letter D. And so we were not serving our students well. Staff turnover was crazy. Teachers were burnt out, they were overworked, really trying to deal with classroom management. And overall, there was just this lack of true leadership. And so we really were experiencing what these penguins are experiencing. We were not doing well and didn't know it until Arizona Department of Ed and Charter Board gave us a letter. Actually, about a month after I became the principal at Hope High School, they gave us a letter that said, you are going to be shut down. And that's when we realized, wow, our iceberg is melting, but how do we even tackle something like that? How do we deal with something so complex that involves so many pieces, moving parts, and people? And most importantly, our loves, our students. How do we fix this for them? How do we turn that love we have for them into serving them well? And so luckily, our CEO, our new CEO at the time came in. His name is Mark French. You know, he had been to a couple of networking gatherings with people that were in Agile and Scrum. And he said, I really think, you know, if we adapt Agile principles and really use Scrum, we can change this whole thing around. And us skeptical penguins who've been in education our whole life thought, this man is crazy. There is no way something meant for IT and production is going to work in education. But we were wrong. And so our CEO at the time said, you know, we really need to change focus. And there are about 4 things that I really want us to hit heavy. We need a common language. That's the first thing that's going to change. And so for us, Agile became that common language. It became something that all of the staff knew about, talked about, even our students. In fact, even now, as people are onboarded into our organization, they are immediately offered the opportunity to become Scrum certified, and they are all thrown directly into a Scrum team. This no longer was just something we talk about. This is who we are. This is how we truly operate. We also needed a common foundation. And for us, using Scrum and the values of Scrum became that common foundation for us. It allowed us to kind of be more open and flexible and actually giving teachers a voice. And speaking of that, we wanted to focus on empowering people. Teachers in most districts are able to talk to each other and they're able to have impact in their classroom. But as far as really impacting change in a district or school, it's almost non-existent. One of the things that we realize is if we are going to change this climate and change the trajectory of our organization, we have to allow voice to the people that are closest to the work, meaning the principals and the district don't get to pass down the initiatives. We need to hear from our students. We need to hear from the teachers about how we impact change and to create buy-in, which leads us into this culture of trust. We realized that, one of the things we were truly missing was we didn't trust each other to get the job done. We didn't even trust each other to say, hey, these are the things that aren't working. Those conversations just were non-existent. And so by adapting some of those agile principles, by getting everyone invested in different Scrum teams, by being completely open and honest with ourselves and facing the challenge, we were really, really able to affect some change. And so our picture changed just a little bit. Our new iceberg is thriving. One of the things that we saw was financial strength pick up. Our revenue actually picked back up, and we paid more attention to the financial part of our organization. Transparency was imperative. In fact, one of the first things we did in an effort to move us in this right direction is we put up a Scrum board in the middle of the high school with all of our problems and all of the things that we needed to fix. And we had our Scrum stand-ups, our team meetings, right there in the middle of the hallway, where students could see the problems, where any stakeholders or parents that walked in, they could see the problems. And it felt really ugly at first to have your dirty laundry hanging in the middle of the school. But that transparency brought us such power, and it allowed our students to feel like they could have a voice. If one of our problems was, we can't fit anything else into the storage room, we have so much stuff, the students could say, I can help with that after school, miss. Can I get in on that? And we started to see this shift in, we're not just airing dirty laundry, we're allowing our community, our parents, our stakeholders, everyone to be bought in this transformation. Student achievement scores soared because teachers were happier. They were able to say what wasn't going well and how they think we should fix it. In fact, I told you our school was a rated D and getting ready to shut down. Well, we changed that verdict to being allowed to open for 20 more years. And also our student achievement scores soared and we became a B rated school in a period of about 3 to 4 years, which is almost unheard of to change that letter grade that quickly. Our staff became empowered. They became the movers and the shakers and the people that were a part of the action. And them being empowered turned into this cultivating our students to also feel empowered, to have some autonomy. And it really created an environment for servant leadership, not just, the CEO to the principals, but from the student level up, we became their servant leaders. So it was a real mind shift in what took place. One of the ways that we were able to visually, physically, tangibly see that our transformation really was real was this year during the pandemic. While other schools were completely failing, in fact, some of them drowning, just trying to survive during this pandemic, we actually had a little time on our hands to innovate. And, really the true, testament, I think, to Agile and being able to change quickly and getting used to these iterations of improvement is that during a crisis, you aren't afraid. You aren't afraid to take risks. You aren't afraid to fail because you know that a pivot is right around the corner and the next improvement is coming if you just keep the pace. And so one of the really cool parts of watching this whole pandemic take place and shape what other school districts were doing, and how stressed they were, seeing us be able to get into a place of we're kind of on autopilot, because everything, there's a system to everything, and people are already open and transparent and the wheels are moving. Let's take this pause and this extra space to do something wonderful. Some of the things that came out of that is, when they told us, well, your schools have to be shut down. Well, no, they can open. Well, no, they need to be shut down. Well, no, they can open. We decided, you know what? We're going to let students decide what's best for them, and we're going to let families decide what's best for them. So we have a student choice schedules. It's a hybrid model where students say, I'm going to come in these days. I'm not going to come in these days. As long as I'm working and someone is connecting with me, they can still have the educational experience that they need. We also came up with having evening town halls, which we open up to all of our students and to their families. They're all on a Zoom call together. And we actually are, again, airing that dirty laundry, but we share data with them. We talk about the decisions we're making and why the decisions were made and how they were made, and we get their feedback. One of the ways we get their feedback is something else that came out of the COVID thing is weekly micro surveys. So every week we send out a question to parents, whether it's about attendance or just your child's well-being, or what does your family need right now? And they respond back to us. That gives us information not only about who's responding, who's active, but also who's hurting. Where do we need to heal? Where do we need more resources? Where do we need more arms to go out and support our families and our students? We've also created the space to start developing our Agile curriculum. Our goal is to create a fully Agile curriculum, and we're starting with student learning styles. How do our students learn best? How do we really wrap our heads around that and start to make change where they're not just mastering an exam, but truly mastering their own learning and becoming champions of their learning? One of the last pieces, and something that we've really paid attention to, is the added social emotional supports for our students. A lot of our students and their families have gone through such turmoil during this time. Our population, our poverty level is really low. We're Title I school, which means about 80 to 85% of our students are below the poverty line. So we saw a lot of lost jobs, lost internet services, no computers, things like that. And so really wrapping our arms around our students, creating and offering new social emotional courses in dealing with anxiety and depression, how to get over hurdles, how to build resiliency. We had time to think about those things, but we did it in a way where it was cross-functional. Everyone in our staff, in our district, are on 1 or 2 Scrum teams that are completely cross-functional. And the only function of that particular team is to address one of the issues that we're facing with our students, whether it be connecting with the students or dealing with attendance or what have you. But it's not just the district's job alone. It's not just the principal's job alone. And so what's next for us is we want to share this with the world. We want to talk about the true transformation that can happen when you adapt Agile principles and even the framework of Scrum to education and get everyone on board. So last year, we were invited by the Scrum Alliance to be a part of the development of something called the Agile Certified Educator Training. For short, we call it the ACE. But this is going to be a certification that's coming out by the Scrum Alliance that is specifically for educators, specifically for us to be able to give districts and teachers the tools and the how-tos on how to start developing their students for the 21st century, how to have schools that are functional and amazing, that actually have space to innovate and to dream and to love their students well, but mostly to serve their students well. And so that's what's next for us in this process. And there we have it.
That's awesome, Kristen. Thank you. We'll jump right in here and make this a lightning round. Take me back to the beginning. How did you find out about Scrum? It came from the tech sector. And what sort of retrofitting did you have to do to say this can actually work for education?
If you don't mind, our CEO, who actually was the person that got that, he's actually on the call. Mark, would you like to take that one?
Sure. Scrum had been introduced to us. I was actually in a team meeting, and someone mentioned it. They had come across an article about how the Scrum process had been applied to nonprofits and churches, and it just struck me that that was really the way to work, to give people the autonomy that they needed, and working in a culture of trust. Just some of those basic concepts just really hit solid with me. So I reached out to find some training, and yeah, it was my first. I guess my first experience was kind of interesting. I went to a Scrum gathering in Atlanta, and I kind of expected, how you sit around the white cloth table and at lunch, and everybody asked where you would work and everything. And I really expected to be kind of shunned a little bit, like everybody would talk about their IT jobs, and then I would mention what I'm doing, and then I would be ignored the rest of the time. But really, it was a really welcoming environment, and it was pretty evident that a lot of these principles applied to other ways of humans working together. It didn't just have to be related to software development. So it was really pretty smooth transition.
That's great. Can you give us something specific that Scrum or an agile way of thinking, can you give us something specific that it helps you work through?
Well, Kristen was talking about the pandemic. I think it makes us fast at our solutions. It gets everyone at the table. I don't know, something specific. What's
I think just even looking at our scores, our achievement scores, one of the reasons we were being shut down is because our achievement scores were so low, and a lot of our students came to us with gaps in education. They came to us 3 to 5 years behind in math and English skills. And how do you fix something like that, overnight? But you do it by getting everyone on the same page and everyone chipping away at the problem, but not running from the problem, not hiding it. You do it by being transparent. You do it by opening the veil and saying, we've got some real issues, parents, students, teachers, stakeholders. How are we gonna solve this? Not just us. The problem is we had gotten in this habit of trying to fix it, us, admin, executives. How do we fix it? We're not closest to the work. We don't have the right solutions because we didn't have the right people at the table. And one of the things specifically it changed for us is having the right people at the table, tutors, our teachers, our students giving input on how are you going to get better at achieving? What do we need to do? We had to be vulnerable enough and trust enough that our students could start to articulate, here's what I need to learn, and here's where you're not meeting the mark. And we had to be open enough to accept that feedback and react to it and pivot the things that we were doing and not, be so focused on the fact that it felt, like we were being judged.
That's great. Thank you. It is 20 after, so we'll open it up to audience questions. And Linda, you've got the first question. I'll read it for you. She put it into the chat here, but hearing about sprints in the Scrum model, can you give an example of a finished project that came from a sprint, which term of art there, so you may want to explain what that is. And then what was that experience like?
I'm going to ask our principal that's on the line, Mrs. O'Connell. She's a current principal of the new Hope High School, and she works with 3 Scrum teams on her campus. Her teachers, her front office lady, they all work on Scrum teams, and that's exactly what they do. Marina?
We have 4 Scrum teams actually now. We have 2 teacher PLC Scrum teams. We have our support staff Scrum team and our Shield Scrum team, which is we handle kind of some of the state and higher level issues. Plus we create the stories as product. We're the product owner team that creates stories for the rest of the Scrum team. But basically, we are able to pivot really every 2 to 3 weeks because that's our sprint cycle. And so whenever we have an issue that really needs to be addressed, like how are we going to schedule all this out so that, teachers can have virtual classes, so that we have students and teachers in the on-site learning lab, so that we can get testing done. How is that all going to work with all of our different schedules and who's on campus when? And so we put that out for the teachers to determine. they figure out their own schedule. I don't ever have to worry about when anybody is sick anymore, because now the team handles it. We have the Jackson 5 and the Champs right now, and the Masked Marvels, and we're Shield, of course. And the teachers handle teacher issues. How are we going to get kids tested? We have to do a virtual site visit that's coming up in December with our ADE site representative. And so I said, this is what she's going to be looking for. This is the format she's going to want. How are you going to make sure you have enough students on your virtual calls? How are you going to be cross-curricular and make sure you have SEL and you have a full lesson and that you can do breakout teams? And I just see them on their group me going back and forth. We got to figure this out. We got to figure that out. And so in 2-week sprints, they present solutions, and we're just like, great. I don't know. They're more innovative than I could be. So that's just one example. We also pivoted because of COVID in a very agile way. We used to have, typical semesters and typical quarters, but now we have 6-week cycles because everything is so new. Now kids take 2 classes every 6 weeks, so that we can every 6 weeks pivot based on new numbers, COVID numbers and all of that stuff, which decide how open we can be as a school. And so we inform our parents in our town hall nights, and we give them an opportunity to give feedback. And so every 6 weeks we pivot, and we actually try to make instruction a little bit better. We do some lean experiments and say, hey, is this going to work out for this 6 weeks? And if it doesn't, then we'll pivot to something different in the next 6-week cycle.
Marina hit on something really interesting. When I was a principal there, and this was all new and just introduced to us, I kind of felt like my role was being threatened a little bit, so I'm just supposed to give all of the work and all of the decisions that I'm qualified to make over to my teachers and students and parents. Like, that doesn't feel good to me as the administrator. What's my job going to be? So there was this huge shift in release of control. And it felt, hard to start with, but through the built trust and the transparency, it was so freeing as an administrator not to feel the weight of the world on my shoulders and to know that I didn't have to do it by myself. And I think a lot of leaders get afraid, especially administrators. We're fancy and we're certified. It gets real hard to think about other people driving your campus and your school. But in the spirit of it, it's so freeing to know that you don't have to have all of the answers, and that you're championing on your teachers and your staff and your crew, and you trust them to make the decisions that are going to be the best, because now they're invested and they're bought in just as much as you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jason, you had a question.
I'm just wondering if any of the creative ideas or any of the innovations that you all realized that helped turn the school around, were all of them easily accomplished within the scope and freedom of your charter, or were there any kind of special permissions or waivers that you had to seek from your authorizer in order to do the things that you all ultimately decided to do?
Jason, of course it wasn't easy. No, there were so many parameters and red tape and things that we had to do, but that is something. We are accountable to the state and we are accountable to the charter board. So we did need to find solutions that would help get us what we needed, but also be able to meet the needs of, the people that are governing us. One of the awesome things that happened this year is that all of those parameters and red tape that have been up for years in education, due to COVID, the walls came down. And we don't care necessarily about attendance. We're going to pay you anyway. We don't care, necessarily about what the test scores were. We're going to give you a pass this year. So seeing all of those walls come down have really put us in a space to kind of dream and think about, and I think even affect change in terms of legislature about, do we really need to spend this much time doing mandated testing and managing, how often this happens and how often that happens? When we open some of those barriers and allowed to get creative, I think they're able to see that students can be more engaged than they've ever been before. You had another question, Jason?
Sure, just real quick. Have you all revisited the Agile model since implementing it, or how have you done that? Have you had folks, independent folks who may be experts at Agile come and study your model, and what have they said? What's good, what's bad, what's not working? Give us a little bit more insight into not just the good, but maybe some of the struggles and challenges.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that we are active about is saying where we struggle. And so we've created a kind of a network of Agile coaches and Scrum coaches and people that whenever we go speak at conferences or meet people, we bring them into the fold. We actually have an Agile coach that's on staff with us that coaches us through, but there are a lot of volunteers that we're connected with that are just super interested in Agile transformation in schools, and they volunteer and donate their time to help get us through some of the hurdles. So absolutely, we're not able to do this on our own, and we're getting really good at telling all of the, all of the bad and the hard that comes with, that transformation. But we do have a really great network, even including companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield of Arizona. They partnered with us and said, let us help your students. We're going to do a 1-year workshop. Every year, we're going to do a workshop just on leadership and Agile and what this looks like. And so they put that on for us every year. And that turned into an internship for one of our students every single year. And so we make it a point to really stay connected in the Agile world and find people that will continue to better us. Because, right, it's not about we're there, we've achieved, not at all. It's about constant improvement, making every iteration better than the next. And sometimes we fail, but the difference is now we fail forward. We don't fail and stop. Now we fail forward.
Thanks so much for your candor. Really appreciate that insight.
Thank you. We've got time for one more quick question, if anybody from the audience.
To piggyback on Jason's question, I would say that we are just in the very beginning stages of working with, I think they're called the Agile Research Council, ARC. Is that what it is, Kristen?
Agile Research Consortium.
And trying to develop some data, some objective studies to see if we can demonstrate that actual student performance can be, objectively observed to be higher if collaboration increases in a measurable way. Those are some of the things that we'd like to get to next, so we can move beyond just anecdotal stories and also be able to cite some data that this is a positive trend that can be reproduced.
That would be fantastic. Please share that with us when you have it. I'm sure that's a ways away, but hey, that brings us to the end here. We're at about our 30 minutes. Super interesting themes there: empowerment and distributed leadership. Some really interesting ideas, and especially interesting to think about how it impacts your school during COVID. So thank you, Kristen. Thank you, Mark, for sharing with us. Marina as well. Folks, next week is our final Basecamp session. I put the link in the chat if you'd like to sign up. We'll be joined by Bottom Line. Super excited about that. And it'll be the final one of the season. And also, quick plug for us, we'll be having our agility. We've been thinking of it as Agility 2.5, but our next agility report, looking at agility over the past year during COVID, we're going to be releasing that in the next week or so. So please be on the lookout for that. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks again to Blueprint, and I hope you all have a great day.